What's up? Welcome back to the weekly What's Up with Wigwam. As always, I'm your host with Wigwam. This week we're going to talk about the Game of Thrones season finale. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Game of Thrones season finale some more. And then we're going to spend about 80% of our time talking about the Game of Thrones season finale. But also we probably will touch on Mario Maker 2 Direct and maybe even a little bit of Get On My Level 2019 fighting game tournament because it was pretty hype. I don't know, why am I doing this? I'm like a dog that's just like... Alright, let's talk about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is over, and a lot of people really hated it, and some people thought it was pretty good. I think I'm kind of more on the camp that thought it was pretty good. So of course there are definitely some valid complaints coming out of this whole season finale. There's also some complaints that are just nitpicks that could easily be explained away, but I'm going to talk about both of those and then move on to what I liked about the show, and then move on to the ultimate best parts of the show. So kind of like the bad, the meh, the good, and then the boom, boom, good stuff. That's how I say that every time. And before we get into this, let's start with the fans and their petition to have HBO remake Season 8, to fire D&D, or whatever other petty, annoying little petitions the internet has gotten themselves in a big huff and signed. Well, you're welcome to have your complaints and critiques of the show. I would say particularly those of you that have no idea what you're talking about because you've never written anything, you've never worked on a show, and you're talking out of your ass, should maybe consider the fact that you're just gonna have to deal with it. There have been a lot of show season finales over the years that people don't necessarily like or agree with, but you're in no way entitled to change the story. Stories are art made by people. You are not allowed to change other people's art just because you don't like the way it ended. That is my firm opinion on this, and I believe that people that sign these petitions come off looking like annoying children who didn't get what they wanted and are now throwing a tantrum. But let's talk about the valid complaints. So, overall season pacing is probably the most valid complaint out of anybody, whether you liked what happened or not, whether you agreed with it, you thought it was out of character. I think we can all agree that the show definitely would have done better with some slower pacing, more episodes, more time, letting things grow and spread their wings in a more natural fashion. Game of Thrones has always been a bit of a slower, meandering story when it comes to plot. Characters talk, schemes are hatched, things come to fruition one slow step at a time. The pacing has certainly been picking up since like season 5 when we started spending less time traveling, which is understandably an evil necessity of the show. We can't spend that much time traveling constantly. We have to start assuming that while time is passing in between these actions, we can't spend that time with every character, or the show would be 20 seasons long, and HBO is not going to make Game of Thrones for 20 seasons. I know everybody thinks in their head Game of Thrones could last a million years with $1 million bajillion budget. It's not reasonable. Maybe they could have gotten another season or two. Maybe they could have even gotten high budgets like they did, but they already got like the largest budget of all of TV history basically for a 6-episode season, so yeah, I'm not really sure how realistic those ideas are. Regardless of realistic or not on how many we could have gotten, we certainly could have gotten more, and the show certainly would have benefited from it. Number 2, the water bottles and coffee cups being left on set. You know, I gotta say that while I do agree that this is a valid complaint, with the first time I was like, that's a nitpick. But the second time I'm like, that has moved its way up into valid complaint territory, but I don't blame the production team. There's no one on set whose specific job it is to look for water bottles and coffee cups. What's supposed to happen is that the main talent is not supposed to bring those things to set. And if you've ever worked on a set with talent, you'll know they don't care and they don't listen, and it's really annoying. So don't blame the PAs or the set decorators or all these people who you think it's their responsibility to do this thing because you know what these positions do, because you've seen a documentary about how movies are made. It's not their job. It was the talent's job to pay attention to their garbage. They brought garbage onto a set and then they didn't pay attention to it. It's their fault. And it's annoying, but please blame the right people. Signed sincerely, a guy that works in production. More on to nitpicks. A lot of these nitpicks could be easily explained with they could have been explained if given more time, but there was no time to give them, so they were just kind of glossed over. That doesn't mean that they don't make sense within the context of the universe. It just means that maybe there should have been a little more talking or dialogue or explanation behind it. But to me, that doesn't qualify as a valid complaint. That's just a show that's running out of time that's gotta wrap stuff up. My number one of those, personally, would be the North seceding with zero pushback from anybody. You can't just be at a meeting and be like, I vote for the new king, I vote for the new king. We vote for the new king who's our brother, but also we're gonna leave and secede. Now, when you think about it, yes, the North actually seceded years and years ago within the context of the story, way back when Robb Stark took up the mantle of king in the North, but they've been fighting for secession for a very long time, and basically everything that the Seven Kingdoms has done to the North has been bad? Pretty bad. So, it makes sense in general that they would secede, and even that they would be allowed to, given all the wars they've waged and the fighting they've done. But it is certainly surprising that Yara of the Iron Isles doesn't step up and be like, whoa, was that an option? Is it too late? Us too? Is that still an option? Then there's Grey Worm not killing Jon the second that he sees that Dany's been murdered. This one could maybe go either way. It would have been nice to get that battle between Grey Worm and Jon. It certainly felt like they were building up towards it across the last 2 episodes, but we didn't get that. But it would make sense to me that Grey Worm wouldn't just instantly kill Jon on the spot. Grey Worm certainly may be prone to his anger at times on the battlefield, but this was not the battlefield. And Grey Worm at his heart really has become a bit more of a diplomat. I think he follows the law a lot more now that he's followed Dany. He's disciplined. Again, when you're on the battlefield, it's one thing to believe that he's just massacring people because basically that's what he's out there to do anyways, and he can get away with it. Grey Worm's not going to just cut down Jon without getting the proper authorities to condemn him to death first, which he was sure was going to happen. It didn't. But, it makes sense to me that Grey Worm's a little more diplomatic than just, I'm gonna get revenge. Then there's people saying that Jaime and Cersei could have survived if they were just standing 10 feet to the left. I think that, again, the part of that scene is that they were dead as soon as they walked into the crypts and saw that the exit was sealed. The exit was sealed prior to them going down there. Now, the whole rocks falling thing, that's literally just played so that Tyrion can have his emotional goodbye, which was beautiful. God, what a good scene. God, Peter Dinklage is a good actor. That scene was wonderful. They wanted to put that wonderful, sad farewell to the Lannister bloodline in there and give Tyrion that chance to say goodbye to a brother who he loved and a sister that he loved too, despite how horribly twisted and evil she was. So you gotta understand that they played that a little for TV. Now, even if you don't want to understand that they played that for TV, what do you people think was gonna happen? Okay, they stood over here, they didn't get crushed to death by rocks, and instead they were immediately beheaded 12 minutes later on the steps of the Red Keep. Okay, great, you're right, they survived because they stood 10 feet to the left and then they died, and it doesn't matter. The death scene we got I felt was great. Jaime's character arc I actually really liked. I'm going to talk about that in the good section because I enjoyed it. So them dying to the rocks was probably actually more preferable to them. Why would you want to be publicly beheaded when you could instead die in the arms of your lovers deep in the crypts of the castle that you once owned? And then my final nitpick, this is another one of mine, is it winter or not? It's supposed to be winter for like a decade following the events of Game of Thrones. Did we skip winter? Is it about to be winter? There's like grass coming through when they go up north that makes me feel like it's spring, but we never even really had winter. Did we forget that Westerosi winter is supposed to last like 5 years at a time? I put this as a nitpick because it doesn't really affect the show at this point, but on the same hand, it's like, just what is going on with the seasons? Then moving on to the good, honestly, I was happy with how most of the character arcs got wrapped up. Even if I wasn't necessarily happy with how rapidly we got to the ending of most of these character arcs, I feel like looking at them as a whole, they did a pretty good job with it. Jaime's always been a character that's been split between good and evil, represented a lot by his gold hand that's fake and his real hand. He does a lot of stuff that can be both sides of this good and evil coin. He was never so simple a character as good or bad from the very beginning. He was always the only person that was ever kind to Tyrion, but on the same hand, he was fucking his sister. And then he forsaked all of his Lannister names and rights to join the Kingsguard, serve the greater good, but on the same hand, he was fucking his sister. He didn't murder the Mad King, stop all the bombs from going off, but on the same hand, he was fucking his sister. Basically, there's been huge good and bad that Jaime has done. His bastard children basically started the war, his support of his wife certainly got numerous innocent people killed. He never really did have any regrets about helping Cersei along the way at all. He knew that he had done a lot of bad things and he'd done them in the name of love, and I truly believe that, true to his character, as long as they were done in the name of love and family, he really didn't care. So for Jaime to go back and die in Cersei's arms, I think that's totally on brand. But on the same hand, it's like all that was evil about Jaime went off to Cersei to die with her, but all that was good was left behind through Brienne. Seen by Brienne, filling out his final notes in his ledger. It's nice to see the White Book of Knights finally get filled out with something besides he's just the king killer, which was always been a beautiful passage. Jaime never saw himself as a good guy. Again, proven to you through the White Book. If you guys would pay attention to subcontext, we wouldn't have to talk so much about this stuff, by the way. Jaime never thought highly of himself. Jaime never thought he was a good guy. Right up until the bitter end, Jaime only defined himself by killing the king and serving his sister. That was Jaime's whole life. Now, he did a lot of good along the way, which other people saw and recognized, but it wasn't how he defined himself. It was nice to see Brienne be Kingsguard, and finishing Jaime's entry was a perfect ending for her. She not only became a knight, she got to join the greatest legion of knights in Westeros, and lead them at that, and rebuild them from the ground up, so I would say it's a pretty fitting ending for Brienne. Arya heading westward was pretty much perfect for Arya. She doesn't want anything to do with lordships and ladyships, and as long as she's in Westeros, she'll never, ever, ever escape that. That is her life there. So she's gonna go off and explore and adventure, and that's just perfect for her. Sansa is the queen in the north, fitting in for Sansa in the north, who spent the last, 7 seasons fighting for their independence, and Sansa, who's been fighting to just stop being taken advantage of every step of the way. Both fitting and good endings. Jon finally gets to leave duty behind and head north of the Wall. Jon has always had leadership thrust upon him and destiny thrust upon him. He's never wanted to be a part of really any of these things, but he just can't seem to escape it until finally he gets to go north with the wildlings. A lot of people think that he's going to become the new Mance Rayder, the new king in the north, the leader of the wildlings, but personally, I like a better idea that he doesn't become king of the north. Jon hates having leadership thrust upon him, but it seems to happen to him wherever he goes. I like the idea better that maybe he just gets to go north and be free for a while. Tyrion can't escape being Hand of the King. He also isn't written about in the Song of Ice and Fire, which are both fitting for him. He always kind of wanted a little bit of glory in the back of his head, which maybe he didn't really deserve. He did a lot of terrible things himself, but he did a lot of good things as well. But at the end of the day, he is the most clever man in Westeros and a fitting Hand of the King. Finally, Bronn as Master of Coin is just hilarious. It's a nice little nod for Bronn, who went from sellsword to Master of Coin in all of the kingdom. It's pretty fitting because no matter what happens to that guy, he seems to luck into the best possible outcome for himself. And finally, Bran himself being king, I'm okay with it. In the end, I felt Bran sitting on the Iron Throne was actually, not bad. It makes sense. He's the wisest person in all of the land. He's got all this history and knowledge. He knows how to steer the kingdom towards peace, and he's fulfilled his destiny with the Night King. So really, without being king, he has no purpose left to live, but with this way, he can continue to help the nations forever and ever. Well, till he dies. Moving on from the characters, nobody is denying at least the music was top-notch. The scores all throughout the final season, and particularly in the final episode, were just absolutely spectacular. And the cinematography as well. The show was incredibly well produced. Music, the shots, how it looked, the acting. Whether you have problems with the writing or not, you cannot deny that this is an expertly crafted show. And finally, the greatest of the great, Ghost gets his pets. Ghost finally gets pet. How could you not pet the dog, Jon? Thank God it finally happened. Finally, moving on from Game of Thrones and briefly talking about some other stuff, we got Mario Maker 2 Direct is coming out. Mario Maker 2 looks awesome. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game in June or July or whenever it is. I keep forgetting. I keep looking it up, and I keep forgetting. I didn't write it down. That's my bad. I'll be honest with you, I never played the original, but I got very excited watching the Nintendo Direct about the second one, so I don't know exactly all of what's new features or old features, but I'm incredibly excited to play some heinous evil courses on stream coming up soon. It seems like there's a ton of variety on things you can make, all sorts of gimmicks like cranes, snakes, planes, automobiles, all sorts of stuff. I'm particularly excited about the night modes, which add variance to each stage, offering low gravity, low light, upside down, all sorts of cool little variants like that, which totally mix up the gameplay. They also add a whole new host of looks to the levels as you can play on the night mode. There's a story mode which I'm excited to play through just so I can learn how Mario Maker works. As a totally new person who didn't have a Wii U and never got to play Mario Maker, I'm gonna probably be jumping in there first. Basically, there's tons and tons and tons of customization. It's Mario, you can play in all sorts of different Mario styles. It looks great. There's basically like no limit to what you can do besides your own creativity, and that is pretty damn exciting. It looks like a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to see what a good, strong, creative community backbone is going to turn this game into. It's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and the game is looking absolutely spectacular. The entire Nintendo Direct was like 15-20 minutes, so give it a check out if you haven't seen it. Also, if you want to pre-order it, you are able to pre-order it with a year of Nintendo Live, or you can pre-order 2 vouchers worth $100, and then you get this game and another game, which both of them seem like pretty good deals. Finally, I want to talk about something that was incredibly exciting for me over the weekend, which was Get On My Level 2019, the premier Canadian Smash Brothers tournament. Melee had a hell of a revival weekend. Melee been on a bit of the slump since Ultimate came out, but Melee came back with a vengeance this weekend. We had great attendance with this tournament with the gods Mango and HBox, God Killers Leffen, Plup, and Zane, other strong contenders like Axe and SFAT all making it to top 8, even leading into top 8, numerous nail-biting Game 5 last stock, last hit scenarios. Absolute edge of your seat excitement from Saturday into Sunday, and then top 8 did not drop the ball. They kept that momentum rolling. HBox the number 1 and rarely defeated versus Leffen, the guy who holds a huge grudge against him, who spent most of the last 6 months playing Ultimate, not Melee. And the other side of top 8 winners, we had Mango, the washed god, versus SFAT. Most people believe that Mango's tournament winning days were far behind him. It's been over a year and a half since Mango won his last tournament. This tournament was cinched to be another easy win for HBox, but things did not go down that way. Leffen totally coming out of nowhere with an incredibly strong performance in destroying HBox, and moving along with Mango to top side of winners finals. Down in loser size, Axe had a surprising match against Zane, taking the win. Wizrobe easily defeating Moki. He was again kind of the wild card there, but doing an insane and unprecedented reverse 3-0 against HBox, again the near undefeatable god of Melee himself. Finally, things progressed into Mother's Day Mango. There's always a rule in Melee, and that's if it's Mother's Day, which it was the week after Mother's Day, Mango's gonna win, and Mango did not disappoint. Even a week late, the power of Mother's Day was strong enough to give Mango his first win in a year and a half. What a hell of a tournament. I'm gonna link a couple of the best VODs down below. If you've never really watched competitive Melee, I'm gonna say that give a couple of these videos a shot. It's certainly more exciting live, but it's certainly gonna be fun to watch post as well. But hey, that's what's up this week. It was an exciting week, a lot going on. It was a very exciting weekend particularly. That was a good Sunday. Game of Thrones, GOML, it was good stuff. What were you excited about this week? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as if you have any questions for me, anything you'd like me to see covered in another video, let me know. As always, love your beautiful faces, and I'll catch you guys next week. Bye-bye.